The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine offices of American Riviera Orchard as reviewed the final details of her latest business venture. The former actress-turned-duchess had poured her heart and considerable resources into this luxury lifestyle brand, envisioning it as her triumphant return to entrepreneurship. The sleek California headquarters buzzed with activity as her team prepared for what they believed would be a groundbreaking launch. It spent months carefully crafting every aspect of the business. From artisanal jams and preserves to high-end home goods, American Riviera Orchard represented everything she wanted to share with the world. The brand promised to deliver premium products with a focus on sustainability and community connection. Her marketing team had developed an extensive campaign targeting both American and British markets, with plans to expand globally within the first year. The business model seemed foolproof. Celebrity status, combined with her royal connections, created a unique market position that competitors couldn't match. Pre-orders had exceeded expectations, with customers eager to purchase products associated with the Duchess of Sussex. Social media engagement was through the roof, and lifestyle magazines had already featured the brand in their upcoming issues. Behind the scenes, however, challenges were mounting. The supply chain had proven more complex than anticipated, with several key suppliers struggling to meet the quality standards demanded. Production costs were escalating, and the team was working overtime to ensure the first shipments would arrive on schedule. Despite these hurdles, optimism remained high among the staff and investors. The financial projections looked promising on paper. Market research indicated strong demand for luxury lifestyle products, particularly those with a royal connection. Investors had committed significant funding based on these projections and track record of generating media attention. The business plan outlined aggressive expansion targets, including partnerships with major retailers and the development of exclusive product lines. Personal involvement in every aspect of the business was both a strength and a potential weakness. Her attention to detail ensured high-quality products, but it also created bottlenecks in decision-making processes. The team often waited for her approval on minor details, slowing down operations that needed to move quickly in the competitive luxury market. The brand's identity was carefully constructed around personal story and values. Marketing materials emphasized her journey from Hollywood to royalty to entrepreneur, positioning her as someone who understood both American and British sensibilities. The California location was chosen specifically to reflect the American Riviera concept, suggesting luxury and sophistication while remaining accessible to everyday consumers. International expansion plans were already in motion. The team had identified key markets in Europe, Canada, and Australia where they expected strong reception. Legal frameworks were being established to handle international shipping, taxation, and regulatory compliance. The complexity of operating across multiple jurisdictions required significant investment in legal and administrative infrastructure. Product development had been a labor of love for. She personally tested every recipe and design, ensuring they met her exacting standards. The jam collection featured unique flavor combinations inspired by her travels and experiences. Home goods reflected her personal aesthetic, blending modern design with classic elegance. Each product told a story, connecting customers to personal brand. The team consisted of experienced professionals from various industries, including former executives from luxury brands, marketing specialists, and operations experts. Had been selective in her hiring, choosing individuals who shared her vision and could execute it effectively. The company culture emphasized innovation, quality, and social responsibility. Manufacturing partnerships spanned multiple countries, each chosen for specific expertise. Jam production took place in small batch facilities known for artisanal quality. Home goods were manufactured by companies with strong environmental and labor practices. This distributed approach created complexity, but allowed for specialized production of different product categories. The launch timeline had been meticulously planned. Initial products would debut in select markets, followed by gradual expansion based on consumer response and operational capacity. Social media campaigns were scheduled to build anticipation, with personally participating in promotional activities. Celebrity endorsements and influencer partnerships were lined up to amplify the message. Customer service infrastructure was designed to handle expected demand while maintaining the personal touch that insisted upon. The team developed comprehensive training programs to ensure representatives could speak knowledgeably about products and company values. Technology systems were implemented to track orders, manage inventory, and provide customers with detailed information about their purchases. Sustainability initiatives were integrated throughout the business model. Packaging materials were chosen for their environmental impact, sourcing prioritized local and organic suppliers where possible, and a portion of profits was designated for charitable causes. These elements weren't just marketing tools, but reflect its genuine commitment to making a positive impact. The competitive landscape presented both opportunities and threats. While few competitors had unique background and media attention, the luxury lifestyle market was crowded with established brands. Success would require not just initial buzz, but sustained customer loyalty and operational excellence. The team studied successful celebrity brands to understand best practices and potential pitfalls. Financial management required careful balance between growth investment and prudent spending. Initial capital would need to last until revenue streams became sustainable. Cash flow projections accounted for seasonal variations, marketing expenses, and unexpected costs. Backup funding sources were identified, but came with dilution of ownership and increased pressure for quick returns. Quality control systems were established at every level of production and distribution. Random sampling, customer feedback analysis, and regular supplier audits ensured products met brand standards. Any issues would be addressed immediately to protect the brand's reputation. Understood that luxury consumers expected perfection and would quickly abandon brands that disappointed them. The weeks leading up to the planned launch were filled with final preparations and last-minute adjustments. Every detail was scrutinized, from website functionality to packaging design. The team worked tirelessly to ensure a smooth customer experience from first contact through product delivery. Media interviews were scheduled, and promotional materials were finalized. Unknown to and her team, discussions were taking place thousands of miles away in the corridors of Westminster that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of their carefully planned business launch. Parliamentary committees were reviewing policies that could impact international business operations, particularly those involving former members of the royal family. The timing of these discussions would prove to be unfortunate for American Riviera Orchard. As the California team put finishing touches on their launch preparations, they remained blissfully unaware of the brewing storm across the Atlantic. Their focus was entirely on execution, customer satisfaction, and building a successful business. The optimism and excitement were palpable as they prepared to introduce American Riviera Orchard to the world, confident in their product quality and market positioning. The announcement came without warning on a Tuesday morning in London. Members of Parliament had been quietly deliberating for weeks about new regulations affecting commercial activities of former working royals. The proposed legislation aimed to prevent the exploitation of royal connections for personal gain, a response to growing public concern about the commercialization of royal titles and associations. The parliamentary committee's decision was swift and decisive. New guidelines would prohibit former members of the royal family from using their titles or royal connections in commercial ventures targeting British consumers. The legislation included provisions for retrospective application, meaning existing businesses would need to comply within 60 days or face restrictions on UK operations. News of the parliamentary decision spread rapidly through media channels. British tabloids seized upon the story, framing it as a direct response to commercial activities. Headlines screamed about royal commerce crackdown and Duchess business ban. The timing couldn't have been worse for American Riviera Orchard, which had heavily marketed itself using its royal connection and planned significant UK sales. Within hours of the announcement, its legal team was in emergency session. The implications were staggering and immediate. Marketing materials featuring royal imagery would need to be withdrawn. Product descriptions mentioning her Duchess title would require revision. Most critically, the entire UK launch strategy, representing nearly 30% of projected first-year revenue, was now in jeopardy. The business operations team scrambled to assess the full impact. Contracts with UK distributors contained clauses that could be triggered by regulatory changes. Shipping arrangements to British customers faced potential complications. Insurance policies might not cover losses from government regulatory action. The carefully constructed business model was unraveling in real time. Herself was caught completely off guard. She had consulted extensively with legal experts before launching the business, believing her approach was both legal and appropriate. The retrospective nature of the parliamentary action felt particularly unfair, as it changed the rules after she had already invested significant time and money based on existing regulations. Her first instinct was to fight back. His team explored legal challenges to the parliamentary decision, arguing that it constituted unfair restraint of trade and potentially discriminatory treatment. Constitutional lawyers were consulted about the retroactive application of new rules. The possibility of challenging the decision in European courts was discussed, though the timeline for such action would be lengthy. The media response was polarized and intense. Supporters argued that was being unfairly targeted for pursuing legitimate business activities. Critics claimed the parliamentary action was long overdue and prevented inappropriate commercialization of royal status. Opinion pieces flooded newspapers and online platforms, turning the business story into a broader debate about royal privilege and commercial ethics. American Riviera Orchard's social media channels were overwhelmed with comments from both supporters and detractors. The customer service team struggled to respond to thousands of inquiries about order status and company policies. Public relations specialists worked around the clock to manage the narrative, but the story had taken on a life of its own beyond their control. The financial implications became clear as the day progressed. Stock market analysts predicted significant losses for the company, though as a private business, specific financial details weren't publicly available. Suppliers began expressing concerns about payment terms and future orders. Some vendors requested additional security deposits before fulfilling contracts, reflecting growing uncertainty about the company's viability. Production schedules faced immediate disruption. Products specifically labeled for the UK market would need to be relabeled or potentially scrapped entirely. Packaging materials featuring royal imagery represented thousands of dollars in sunk costs. The manufacturing partners expressed sympathy but demanded clarity about modified specifications and delivery timelines. The investor community reacted with alarm and disappointment. While most understood that regulatory risks existed in any business, the speed and scope of the parliamentary action exceeded worst-case scenarios. Emergency board meetings were called to discuss damage control measures and potential exit strategies. Some investors began exploring options to protect their investments. Employee morale at American Riviera Orchard plummeted as news of the parliamentary decision spread. Many team members had joined the company specifically because of its royal connection and unique market position. The possibility of massive layoffs or complete business closure became a topic of hushed conversations throughout the office. Some employees began quietly updating their resumes. International expansion plans came to a grinding halt. Other countries with historical ties to Britain began reviewing their own policies regarding royal commercial activities. The European Union indicated it might consider similar restrictions, potentially closing off vast markets that had been central to the business plan. Even Commonwealth nations expressed concerns about appearing to support commercialization of royal connections. The technology infrastructure supporting the business faced unprecedented strain. Website traffic spiked as curious consumers sought information about the controversy. Order processing systems struggled with the volume of inquiries and cancellation requests. The customer database, which had been a valuable asset, now became a liability as it contained thousands of UK customers whose orders were now in limbo. Supply chain partners found themselves in an impossible position. Many had invested in specialized production capabilities, specifically for American Riviera Orchard. Canceling or modifying contracts would result in significant losses for all parties. Some suppliers offered to extend payment terms or modify agreements, while others demanded immediate clarification of the company's intentions. The marketing department worked frantically to develop alternative strategies that didn't rely on royal connections. New positioning concepts emphasized California lifestyle, sustainability, and product quality rather than royal heritage. However, removing royal associations from a brand so heavily built around them proved nearly impossible without fundamentally changing the company's identity. Customer reactions varied widely by geography and demographic. American customers generally remained supportive, viewing the parliamentary action as British overreach. UK customers were divided, with some sympathetic to the situation while others agreed with the government's position. Pre-orders began experiencing increased cancellation rates as customers became uncertain about delivery timelines and company stability. The legal team identified potential workarounds to the parliamentary decision. Establishing a separate UK entity without royal connections might allow continued operations in British markets. Licensing agreements with unrelated British companies could provide market access while maintaining regulatory compliance. However, all these options would require significant time and additional investment. Media interviews became a minefield for company representatives. Every statement was scrutinized for hints about future strategy or financial condition. Herself was advised to limit public appearances until the situation stabilized. The communications team developed carefully worded statements that acknowledged the challenge while expressing confidence in the company's future. The parliamentary action had broader implications beyond American Riviera Orchard. Other celebrity-founded businesses began reviewing their own practices and market positioning. Legal experts predicted increased scrutiny of celebrity commercial activities, particularly those involving former government officials or public figures. The precedent set by the royal commerce restrictions might extend to other areas. As the first day of crisis management concluded, the scale of the challenge facing American Riviera Orchard became apparent. The parliamentary decision had transformed a promising business launch into a fight for survival. Recovery would require not just legal and operational adjustments, but a complete reimagining of the company's market position and growth strategy. The crisis deepened as the second week brought a cascade of complications that no one had anticipated. Major UK retailers, spooked by the parliamentary decision and negative media coverage, began withdrawing from distribution agreements. And other prestigious department stores that had committed to carrying American Riviera Orchard products sent formal notices terminating their contracts, citing regulatory compliance concerns and potential reputation damage. The domino effect was swift and merciless. European distributors, initially hesitant but hopeful, started following the lead of their British counterparts. French luxury retailers expressed concerns about association with controversial royal commerce issues. German department stores requested legal opinions before proceeding with any agreements. The carefully constructed international distribution network was collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. Found herself in an impossible position, caught between maintaining her principles and salvaging her business investment. Her legal advisors presented increasingly stark options. Complete compliance with the parliamentary guidelines would require stripping away almost everything that made the brand unique and marketable. The alternative was accepting exclusion from significant markets and potential legal challenges. The financial bleeding intensified as daily operations continued despite uncertain revenue prospects. Payroll obligations for nearly 50 employees couldn't be suspended while legal battles played out. Warehouse leases, insurance premiums, and supplier payments created a constant drain on resources. The company's burn rate, previously manageable with projected sales, now threatened to exhaust available capital within months. Desperate measures became necessary as traditional funding sources dried up. Several prominent investors, including some who had been enthusiastic supporters just weeks earlier, quietly from planned additional funding rounds. Private equity firms that had shown interest suddenly became unavailable for meetings. The royal controversy had made American Riviera Orchard toxic in investment circles, at least temporarily. The production challenges exponentially. Thousands of jars already manufactured with royal-themed labeling sat in warehouses, unusable in key markets. The cost of relabeling exceeded the value of many products. Some suppliers offered to modify existing inventory, but the time and expense involved would further delay an already troubled launch timeline. Customer service representatives faced increasingly difficult conversations with disappointed consumers. Pre-order customers demanded updates on shipping schedules that no one could provide. Refund requests as uncertainty about the company's future spread. The team struggled to maintain professional composure while dealing with the stress of their own job insecurity. His personal brand suffered significant damage as the business crisis unfolded. Critics argued that her troubles proved she was out of touch with public sentiment and business realities. Supporters countered that she was being unfairly targeted by establishment forces resistant to change. The polarization made it nearly impossible to have rational discussions about the actual business challenges. The media-feeding frenzy showed no signs of abating. New stories emerged daily, often with conflicting information about the company's financial condition and future plans. Anonymous sources claiming inside knowledge fed rumors about massive losses and impending closure. The constant negative coverage made it almost impossible to execute any recovery strategy that required public confidence. Behind closed doors, emergency restructuring discussions began. Bankruptcy attorneys were consulted about asset protection and potential reorganization options. The possibility of selling the company to larger players was explored, though few potential buyers showed interest given the regulatory uncertainties and damaged brand reputation. Every option seemed to involve massive losses for founders and investors. The technology platform that supported online sales faced unexpected challenges as traffic patterns shifted dramatically. While overall website visits increased due to curiosity about the controversy, conversion rates plummeted as potential customers hesitated to make purchases from a company in crisis. The customer relationship management system struggled to handle the volume of inquiries and complaints. International shipping became a nightmare as regulatory uncertainty spread beyond the UK. Customs officials in several countries began flagging packages from American Riviera Orchard for additional scrutiny. Some shipments were delayed for weeks while authorities determined appropriate handling procedures. The additional costs and delays further eroded already thin profit margins. The human cost of the crisis became increasingly apparent as stress took its toll on the entire organization. Several key employees began exploring other opportunities, not wanting to risk career damage from association with a failing company. Herself showed signs of the immense pressure, though she maintained public composure while privately struggling with the collapse of her carefully planned venture. Supplier relationships, once strong and collaborative, became increasingly transactional and difficult. Many vendors demanded cash payment up front rather than extending credit terms. Others simply declined to fulfill new orders until existing accounts were settled. The loss of supplier confidence created operational challenges that compounded existing financial pressures. The public relations team attempted various strategies to reshape the narrative, but every effort seemed to backfire. Interviews intended to humanize struggle were criticized as tone-deaf given her privileged position. Statements emphasizing product quality were overshadowed by questions about business viability. The communications challenge seemed insurmountable given the level of scrutiny and predetermined positions of key audiences. Legal expenses mounted rapidly as the company pursued multiple strategies simultaneously. Constitutional challenges to the parliamentary decision required specialized expertise. Contract disputes with distributors and suppliers needed commercial litigation support. Intellectual property concerns arose as competitors attempted to capitalize on the chaos. The legal bills alone threatened to consume remaining operational funds. The sustainability initiatives that had been central to the brand's identity became casualties of the crisis. Environmental commitments required long-term thinking and stable operations that were now impossible. Charitable partnerships were quietly suspended as the company focused on survival. The values-based marketing that had differentiated American Riviera Orchard became irrelevant in the face of existential threats. Market research revealed the extent of brand damage. Consumer perception studies showed significant decline in purchase intent, particularly in key demographic segments. Focus groups revealed that even sympathetic consumers were hesitant to buy products from a company surrounded by controversy. The path to rebuilding trust appeared lengthy and uncertain. Strategic advisors brought in to assess options provided sobering analysis. Recovery would require not just resolving regulatory issues, but completely rebuilding market position from scratch. The time and resources needed exceeded what most startups could survive. Even in best-case scenarios, the company would emerge fundamentally different from what had originally envisioned. The personal toll on became increasingly visible despite attempts to maintain privacy. Friends reported that she was devastated by the rapid collapse of something she had worked so hard to build. The criticism felt personal and unfair, particularly given her belief that she had operated within established legal frameworks. The stress affected her family life and other commitments. As the third week of crisis concluded, American Riviera Orchard faced a critical decision point. Continuing operations required significant additional investment with no guarantee of success. Closing the business would mean accepting massive losses and acknowledging defeat. The choice between fighting and surrendering would determine not just the company's fate, but its future as an entrepreneur and public figure. The turning point came during a marathon board meeting that stretched past midnight on a rain-soaked Thursday evening in California. Exhausted investors, advisors, and company leadership faced the harsh reality that American Riviera Orchard, as originally conceived, could not survive the parliamentary assault and subsequent market rejection. The numbers were unforgiving, and the options were few. Sat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by financial documents that painted an increasingly bleak picture. Monthly burn rates had tripled due to crisis management costs, while revenue projections had been slashed by more than half. The company had perhaps 6 weeks of operating capital remaining, and that assumed no additional unexpected expenses or legal settlements. The discussion focused on 3 potential paths forward. The first option involved immediate liquidation, selling remaining inventory at discount prices, and dissolving the company with minimal additional losses. This would preserve some value for investors, but represent complete failure of entrepreneurial ambitions. The psychological impact of such an outcome seemed almost as devastating as the financial consequences. The second option required massive restructuring and rebranding, essentially creating an entirely new company that bore no resemblance to the original vision. This would mean abandoning the royal connection completely, developing new product lines, and rebuilding customer relationships from scratch. While theoretically possible, the time and resources required made success highly uncertain. The third option involved finding a strategic buyer willing to acquire the company despite its problems. Several luxury conglomerates had expressed tentative interest, but their proposed valuations reflected the company's distressed condition rather than its original promise. Accepting such offers would mean accepting massive losses while surrendering control of the business had built. As dawn broke over the Pacific, a decision emerged from the exhausted deliberations. The company would pursue a controlled wind-down over the next 60 days, honoring existing customer orders where possible while liquidating remaining assets. It was a dignified surrender rather than a chaotic collapse, but the outcome was the same. American Riviera Orchard would cease operations. The announcement came the following Monday morning through a carefully crafted statement that emphasized the company's commitment to customers while acknowledging the impossible regulatory and market conditions. Personally signed off on every word, knowing that this communication would likely define public perception of her business venture for years to come. Employee reactions ranged from relief to devastation. Some had anticipated the decision and were prepared to move on quickly. Others had invested their hearts in the company's mission and felt personally betrayed by the circumstances beyond their control. Severance packages were generous considering the financial constraints, and personally wrote recommendation letters for every team member. The liquidation process proved more complex than anticipated. UK authorities demanded additional documentation before allowing products to be exported or destroyed. Insurance companies disputed coverage for losses related to regulatory changes. Suppliers disagreed about liability for canceled orders. Each complication extended the timeline and increased costs. Customer communication became a delicate balancing act. Those who had received products before the crisis generally expressed satisfaction with quality, validating commitment to excellence. However, customers whose orders were canceled felt betrayed and demanded explanations that the company couldn't provide without risking legal exposure. Media coverage of the closure was extensive but less hostile than during the peak crisis. Some outlets acknowledged that had faced unprecedented challenges that might have defeated any entrepreneur. Others maintained that the failure proved she was unsuited for business leadership. The divided opinions reflected broader societal disagreements about her role and status. The financial aftermath was sobering for all involved. Initial investors lost approximately 80% of their capital, though some assets retained value for future ventures. Employees faced varying degrees of financial hardship depending on their stock options and employment duration. Herself absorbed the largest losses, both financial and reputational. Legal battles continued even after operations ceased. The constitutional challenge to the parliamentary decision proceeded through British courts, though victory would come too late to save American Riviera Orchard. Several supplier disputes required mediation or arbitration to resolve. Intellectual property questions arose as competitors attempted to acquire valuable trademarks and designs. The personal impact was profound and lasting. Friends described her as deeply hurt by the public nature of the failure and the personal attacks that accompanied it. The experience challenged her confidence in ways that previous controversies had not. Questions arose about whether she would attempt another business venture or focus on other activities. The broader implications extended beyond one failed company. Other celebrity entrepreneurs began reassessing their strategies, particularly those with any government or royal connections. Investors became more cautious about backing businesses that relied heavily on founder celebrity rather than fundamental business strength. The incident became a case study in business schools about regulatory risk and crisis management. 6 months after the closure announcement, spoke publicly about the experience for the first time. She acknowledged mistakes while defending her team's dedication and product quality. The tone was reflective rather than bitter, suggesting personal growth despite professional disappointment. She hinted at future plans but provided no specific details about new ventures. The warehouse liquidation sales attracted bargain hunters and curiosity seekers alike. Products that had been positioned as luxury items sold for a fraction of their intended retail prices. Some buyers were genuine fans hopping to own a piece of history. Others were speculators betting that scarcity might eventually create collector value. Lessons emerged from the American Riviera orchard experience that influenced business practices across industries. The importance of regulatory risk assessment became more apparent to entrepreneurs and investors. The volatility of celebrity-based businesses was reinforced. The speed with which modern communications could amplify crisis situations was demonstrated dramatically. The technology platform developed for the company found new life with other businesses. The customer relationship management system and e-commerce capabilities represented significant investment and development work. Licensing these systems to other companies generated some recovery for investors while providing valuable tools to the broader business community. Charitable commitments that had been suspended during the crisis were eventually honored through personal contributions from and some investors. The amounts were smaller than originally planned, but the gesture demonstrated integrity in difficult circumstances. Several suppliers also contributed products or services to maintain the charitable relationships. The brand name and trademarks remained valuable assets despite the company's failure. Multiple parties expressed interest in acquiring these intellectual property rights for future use. Negotiations proceeded slowly as legal experts worked to ensure that any transfers with the regulatory restrictions that had caused the original problems. Employee alumni from American Riviera Orchard scattered throughout the business world, carrying with them valuable experience and professional relationships. Many found positions with other lifestyle brands or started their own ventures. The network they formed continued to be a source of mutual support and collaboration years after the company's closure. As the final legal documents were filed and the last assets distributed, American Riviera Orchard officially ceased to exist as a business entity. What remained were memories of what might have been, lessons about the unpredictability of business and politics, and questions about whether different decisions could have produced different outcomes. This next chapter remained unwritten as observers speculated about her future directions. Would she return to entertainment, focus on philanthropic work, or attempt another business venture with lessons learned from this experience? The American Riviera Orchard story had ended, but her larger story continued with new possibilities and challenges ahead. The parliamentary decision that triggered the crisis was eventually modified after extensive legal challenges, but the changes came too late to help the company that had been its most prominent casualty. Other businesses benefited from the clarified regulations, but for American Riviera Orchard, the damage was permanent and irreversible. Years later, business historians would debate whether the company might have survived with different strategies, better timing, or more aggressive legal challenges. What remained clear was that the intersection of celebrity, politics, and commerce created unique risks that even experienced entrepreneurs might struggle to navigate successfully. The American Riviera Orchard story became a cautionary tale about the unpredictable nature of building a business in the public eye.